times. Lord, send us something to review this year. Something good and decent. Something that shows the best of Christianity for the holiday season. Maybe something that isn't that well known that we could draw attention to. That's not what I asked for.
Mysterious Ways!
Oh boy.
Welcome back to Faith on Film, where we raid your church library in search of the good stuff. And happy holidays, everybody!
Don't you mean Merry Christmas?
Cups up!
What are you doing?
Is this abnormal?
Not for you. I'm Stephanie. He's Nathan.
Hi!
For today's selection, we're going back to the long ago year of 2014, where a humble, independent little Christian movie redefined the game and changed the landscape of Christian cinema forever. I am, of course, referring to Saving Christmas.
Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas.
And I suppose we couldn't avoid him forever. So what's this movie about, anyway? Judging off of that poster, I'm going to say this is a movie about taking Christmas back from all the commercialism, or maybe the war on Christmas.
No, it's about neither of those things. Instead, this is about a debate that only dyed-in-the-wool Christians have about how Christmas and some of its associated traditions are derived from pagan origin. Yeah? I mean, the church would come into new territories and go, okay, you guys can keep doing this party, but it's about Jesus' birthday now, huh? That's not a secret. Is that a problem?
Okay, on paper, there isn't necessarily anything inherently wrong with an intra-religious discussion. And if your theme was something along the lines of, hey, Christians, lighten up, that's something I could, in theory, get behind. Too bad this, I hesitate to call it a movie, is such garbage.
For a split second, I felt bad about going to make fun of this thing. It kind of feels like offering a critique of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four in that it doesn't feel like something that was ready to be released. Then I remember, not only did Saving Christmas go to theaters, Kirk claimed that the only reason people said it was bad was anti-Christian bias, and he then encouraged his fans to spam Rotten Tomatoes with positive reviews. Bite me, Cam. The personification of the sort of Christian this movie is directed at is a fella named Christian. Wow. Cribbing notes from John Bunyan, are we?
Even Lay It Down wasn't that lazy. Holy cow, I just gave Lay It Down credit for something. I feel so dirty.
He is Kirk's brother-in-law and is played by the co-writer/director Darren Doan. The majority of the story is Kirk cornering Christian in his car to tell him about how Christmassy things have actually been about Jesus forever. Okay, it's an interesting strategy.
He starts with the nativity set. What? You heard me.
Oh, gee, I wonder how the nativity set has anything whatsoever to do with Jesus. You're gonna have to use your smart words to explain that to stupid old me, Kirk.
You want to know the weird part?
We're not to the weird part yet?
Christian brings up the nativity scene, yes. But not in that it doesn't have anything to do with Jesus, as much as it's not displayed as prominently in the house as the other decorations. So Christian already accepts this premise.
Kirk then argues that the Bible never actually says that Jesus was born in a stable. In fact, traditionally, it has been said to be a cave. Okay, sure, Justin Martyr, dialogue with Trypho, but it's still not in the Bible, so Your point?
Kirk then goes on to suggest that if you take away Joseph and Mary, and even if you take away the baby Jesus, you are left with the swaddling cloths. And the swaddling cloths could be viewed as a reminder of the burial shroud that was left behind in the empty tomb after Jesus' resurrection. So, the Bible reminds you of the Bible? Congratulations, I guess. Too bad this has nothing to do with what Christian was concerned about.
Kirk then talks about how Jesus was born into a world where the government wanted to kill him just for being born, and how Herod's soldiers were marching through the streets of Bethlehem slaughtering babies. Yeah? The point I think he's going for is that the Nativity wasn't this cutesy scene we like to imagine it as, but was instead God entering the world of pain and suffering alongside us? But I can't for the life of me see the connective tissue between that and the swaddling cloths. While we're here, Kirk encourages us to not envision the scene with white people.
Okay.
And then they cast white people to play Mary and Joseph in the fantasy sequence. What are we doing here? Could you not put out a casting call for Middle Eastern actors?
Yeah, you're assuming that Kirk knows more than one non-white person at a time.
This argument comes back up much later in the film as a complete non sequitur when Kirk encourages us, the viewers at home, to view nutcrackers as representatives of Herod's soldiers to accompany the nativity set. Nutcrackers.
So what you're saying is, Pasolini should have used this music.
You have disgraced the name of Pasolini.
Okay, I'll show myself out.
Get back here!
Drat! Up next, Christian argues that Christmas trees are pagan in origin because Christmas trees are not anywhere in the Bible.
For the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen, with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold, they fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. Jeremiah 10.
Well, that's just embarrassing.
But rather than going with the more Pauline track of saying, hey, if we genuinely believe that Jesus has won the victory, there's no harm in these things. Kirk takes a more creative path.
Of course.
First he says that images of trees were used to decorate Solomon's temple, which is true.
Okay.
Then he says that they had lights on them. If there's a verse for that, I would love to see it, because from where I stand, you pulled that out of nowhere.
Unless he means that there were torches on the wall, in which case that is not unique. That's how buildings were lit back then. That doesn't matter. He then slams on the brakes and goes into a completely different argument about the Garden of Eden being a tree lot.
No.
No.
No, it wasn't. What follows is one of the biggest leaps in logic I have ever heard. Adam stole the fruit of knowledge off the tree and ingested it, making it part of his body. Then, in order for Jesus to put the fruit back on the tree, he had to put his own body onto the tree. Congratulations! We've officially entered non sequitur land.
Oh, we went there a long time ago. And this movie is bananas.
That is Ray Comfort. They are not the same.
Behold, the atheist's nightmare. Now, the banana and the hand are perfectly made one for the other.
Following this logic, Kirk says that a tree covered in representations of fruit represents Jesus hanging on the cross.
Then he also says that the empty tree that you find in the tree lot is a representation of the empty cross that Jesus got off of when he rose again. Okay, which one is it? Which metaphor are we going with here? The cover tree or the bear tree? Christian goes into Santa Claus and how he's not in the Bible either, and how the letters of Santa, when rearranged, can also spell Satan.
Oh, jeez.
Kirk immediately concedes that Santa is not in the Bible. Not that that stops Christian from pressing the question. He does, however, redirect our attention to Nicholas of Myra. Again, this is not a secret. We call him Saint Nicholas all the time.
Kirk then directs our attention to the Council of Nicaea, where Nicholas squared off against the evil heretic Arius, who was corrupting church doctrine by preaching that Jesus was merely a man and not the Son of God. Thanks to Nicholas fighting off this heresy, Trinitarianism was established. You want to take a crack at that?
No! No, not you, Kirk Cameron. No! Almost everything he said was wrong! First of all, Arius wasn't straying away from established church doctrine. There was no established church doctrine yet. That was kind of the point of the ecumenical councils, to create dogma, not enforce it. There were a lot of different theologies cropping up within the early church, all of them competing with each other. Kirk is just employing hindsight bias by saying mainline Trinitarianism, which won out, was always the default that other heretics were straying away from. Second, Arius definitely believed Jesus was more than just a man and was the Son of God. He just had a different understanding of those terms. He believed that Jesus was the Logos, the first creation of God, through whom God then created the rest of the cosmos. If you met an ordinary Arian today, you probably would not be able to tell the difference between them and a modern Christian. Third, while the Nicene Creed was foundational to Trinitarianism, it did not establish it. It established that Jesus was co-equal and co-eternal with God the Father, but the personhood of the Holy Spirit would not be decided until the First Council of Constantinople 56 years later.
And that's my cue to take over. To counter Arius, Nicholas recites, "The Word was with God, and the Word was God." Hang on. That verse was important to Arius too. It's just that our English translation of "and the Word was God" doesn't quite capture the nuance of the original Greek. It could just as easily read, "and the Logos was divine."
In other words, Nicholas is being an exceptionally bad debater by simply restating the thing that they are arguing about, as if that means he wins.
Also, you notice we never actually hear what Arius is actually saying, because narrator Kirk is talking over him, so we just have to take Kirk's word for it, that Arius is saying something bad. And then Nicholas punches Arius in the face, because the most Christian thing about a man known throughout the world for his kindness to children and his charity towards the poor is the time he assaulted someone in a bar for having a different religious belief. Nathan.
Stop that.
This is the gospel according to Cameron!
But rather than a simple slap across the face, Nicholas beats this man to a pulp while dubstep plays. 'Cause that's how you appeal to the youths these days, right? Violence and popular music.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Kirk tells us that this was not a time for this pastor to be politically correct.
Bark! Bark, 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 bark!
What?
You don't hear that?
You may have also noticed that these clips don't look anything like the Ecumenical Council. There's a reason for that. According to Kirk, he doesn't want us to picture this with incense and robes. It would be a mess. Further proving that modern evangelical Christianity is really embarrassed by its liturgical history. Instead, he wants us to picture this a little more Lord of the Ringsy. Yeah, you leave Peter Jackson out of this.
Pasolini.
Point taken.
I think that the most likely reason of all is that their budget was 3 sizes too small. So instead, the scene is relocated to a local tavern, which somehow makes it way worse. Now, instead of being gathered together for the specific intention of debating theology, Nicholas is rudely interrupting Arius, excitedly sharing his viewpoint with some people who seem to be genuinely interested, as interested as actors of this caliber can manage. And it paints a worse picture of church history in that important doctrines are determined by who wins in a bar fight. Because there were just oh so many bar fights in The Lord of the Rings.
Through all of this, Christian is somehow convinced that Christmas was about Jesus all along, and he goes back inside to join the party, and slow-mo slides across the floor while everyone just stares at him. And then he stares at the pile of presents under the tree for an uncomfortably long period of time.
The only reason he does this is so Kirk can opine to us at home how the wrapped up presents can be viewed as a symbol of the New Jerusalem from Revelation. There's even a little doodle to, fill in the gaps of that analogy that makes no sense.
Why does the New Jerusalem look like New York City? Also, Christian has been won over. Stop talking!
But wait! There's more! Because Kirk then argues that the tree in the center of the presents is the tree of life in the center of the New Jerusalem. Never mind that it was the tree of knowledge a moment ago. That was a different metaphor. It's a new thing now.
But Kirk also talks about the lights around the city. And the way the camera is positioned, the focus is on the Christmas tree with the lights, so that would imply that the tree with the lights on it is both the walls of the city and the center of the city at the same time. I'm so confused.
Then they go feast. Kirk's word, not mine. And Kirk continues to narrate. This time, it's about how Jesus took on a material body, so it's right to celebrate with material things. The argument Kirk thinks he's making is that if God entered our physical realm and lived among us, it follows that our physical lives here are important, and taking care of each other is also important. That's not what he's actually saying for a couple reasons.
Let's go way back to the beginning of this train wreck. Buried within Christian's yammering are the usual concerns about the commercialism associated with Christmas, and how it only encourages greed and self-centeredness and never being satisfied. He also wonders aloud how much good they could have done in the world if they hadn't been spending all their money on ultimately meaningless baubles. Kirk starts off by acknowledging that his brother-in-law might have a point, before saying, "You're all wrong."
The closest anyone in the good side of the debate gets to actually caring about their fellow man is the character of Uncle Bill. Kirk's sister, who goes unnamed throughout the entire movie, by the way, says that the Santa Claus they hired for their party is their unemployed uncle who is down on his luck. Ah yes, behold the highlight of Christian compassion. Hiring a man to work his own family gathering for a single night.
More to the point, Kirk follows up his misguided thinking by saying that at Christmas you should break out your finest china, buy the finest foods. So, rather than seeing life as important, translate into giving a crap about your fellow man on more than one night of the year, Kirk concludes that you need to buy buy expensive stuff just for the sake of buying expensive stuff because that glorifies God. I think what he's trying to say is that God deserves the very best. However,
For when I was hungry, you ate the finest pot roast. For when I was thirsty, you drank some pretty sweet champagne. For when I was in prison, you said I could be Santa Claus at your Christmas party.
I don't think that's how that goes. Seriously though, Mr. Cameron, your poster lied to me. Here I thought we saved Christmas by cutting through all the pomp and circumstance and focusing on what really matters. Hey! Put peanuts away.
But I'm nostalgic for a Charlie Brown Christmas. Seriously, Linus summed up what Kirk thinks he's saying in less than half the time.
For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
How is that possible?
Charles Schultz wasn't a hack?
The other thing people thought this movie would be about was the so-called War on Christmas. But it really isn't. Sort of? Okay, in Kirkle's introduction, he talks about two different outgroups. One, the Christians who say that things are of pagan origin and we shouldn't do them. And the other being the people who say, you can celebrate Christmas, but not so loud. That sure sounds like he's saying there's a culture war, right?
About that, one of the characters in this movie is a conspiracy nut. He's always talking with his lips hidden behind the mugs, so the hidden cameras don't pick up on what he's saying. And he goes on a spiel about how Fox News told him all about the war on Christmas, and how all the nativity sets are being stashed away in Area 52, and... wait, hold on. Is this movie mocking the people who think that the world is out to take Christmas away from them? If so, that's kind of a mixed message.
It gets better! The actor who plays that guy is also the same one who plays Arius, meaning that this movie is conflating belief in the war on Christmas with heresy. So by this movie's own admission, there is no war on Christmas?
Again, in the hands of a competent screenwriter, this could tie back to the theme that I wanted to get out of this movie. That theme being, hey Christians, lighten up. But this movie manages to say both and neither at the same time. So what we have here is a whole lot of nothing.
Nothing is a good summation of it. Structure-wise, this movie is all over the place. It's structured like an essay rather than a story. Even if that is the case, essays usually only have one introduction, not two cold openings and then a third introduction after that. We start off with Kirk sitting alone in front of the fireplace talking to us about the themes of the movie we're about to see while drinking obviously empty cups of cocoa. Then it cuts to the CamFam Studios logo, because apparently Kirk's family needs their own logo. Then we cut to some out-of-context clips from later in the movie while Kirk narrates about how stories get told and retold. Then we cut to an actually decent animated credit sequence, which breaks down some of the assumptions we culturally have about the nativity story that aren't actually in the Gospels, though that's largely irrelevant to the movie. Then we finally get into the movie proper, and Kirk introduces himself yet again.
The opening is hardly the only place where this movie lacks structure. Christian has been convinced. He has rejoined the party. Kirk has won. This movie should be over. But no, Kirk still has 2 more topics to get through. But before we get to those, we have a dance party. Set to Angels We Have Heard on High by Family Force 5, just in case you were wondering if this was a secular cover. Christian claims that he totally coordinated this right there on the spot, even though he did not have time to do that.
In a real movie, such a dance party would be your cue that the story is over. We are segueing into the credits, let's just have some fun. Not so in Saving Christmas. Because this is sandwiched between when they talk about presents being the New Jerusalem and when they go feast.
But why stop there? This movie is full of technical mistakes that really add up after a while. Just to name a few, the camera is obviously in the wrong place for more than one scene. The exposition is pretty sloppy. Seriously, who are all of these people? How big is this family? I'm not really sure what the editing choice was here. Kirk is both somehow simultaneously standing in the doorway and in the Santa Claus pictures. I don't know. Then there's also the pacing. This movie is plagued by so many awkward pauses. Seriously, who edited this thing? Didn't you reshoot anything?
Cut, Brent, we're moving on. That was perfect.
Perfect. Mr. Wood, do you know anything about the art of film production?
Some of the pauses were probably for dramatic purposes, but others were definitely to give the audience a space to laugh. Oh, trust me, we were laughing. Not for the reasons you wanted us to.
Like DeAndre. He's the Cam Fam's black friend. You can tell because he talks a mile a minute. He slips in a praise Jesus every now and again. And he's just rambling on in hopes that you will find him funny. Amidst his yammering, he slips in the word straight pride.
Bark! Bark, 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 bark,
What
bark!
are you doing?
There's a very loud whistle. I don't know how you don't hear that.
It's funny that Christian looks down on DeAndre for babbling incoherently when he does the exact same thing. Seriously, this character cannot put together a coherent sentence when he's trying to argue if his life depended on it.
I think that the filmmakers assumed giving him space to improvise would make him funny? But it winds up making him worse than a typical straw man because he can't speak intelligently. At least Professor Radisson could form a coherent paragraph.
Where this really gets annoying is every now and then he has something resembling a point, but we don't care about that.
Oh, no. We're much too busy saying how we're giving old symbols new meanings.
Hang on. I thought the whole point of this movie was that these symbols meant these Christian things the whole time. Make up your mind. This movie is a mess of contradictions.
That is an accurate summation. This movie, as you may have surmised, is not good. It's not even okay.
But you know the thing I think I find the most insulting about this movie? Our conflict is not actually set into motion by Christian saying or doing anything out of line. He's just upset and not participating in the party. Kirk even says that there can be reasons why someone might not be up to celebrating Christmas. But then he ignores his own advice and basically tries to shame Christian into having a good time at the party because him not having a good time is making his wife sad. You're basically saying that he needs to be happy for the group. That is not healthy. Also, Christmas is not the end-all be-all, guys. We had this conversation last year.
This movie is such a colossal mess on every conceivable level. I am not surprised it won multiple Razzies, including Worst Screen Combo.
That was for Darren Doan and Kirk's sister, right?
No, Kirk and his ego. This movie is kind of worse than anything we've reviewed so far, but it's worse in such a bafflingly entertaining way that it loops back around into being enjoyable. In the right frame of mind, of course. As such, it is my distinguished pleasure to decree that Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas is our very first So Bad, It's Good. You have anything to add, Steph?
Just this.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
You know, I really need a palate cleanser, something to try to get me into the Christmas mood. What the heck, you want to watch the Star Wars Holiday Special?
It's not the end, friend. If you're a friend, then you'll come back to me soon.
This was a mistake. He's Nathan.
Hi! I hit my nose. Ow.
Let's just start again.
From the top?
Yeah, maybe, because...
You're just saying that because you don't have to do your own stunts.